time of the year. Hello and welcome to First Take. Courtney Cronin, Chris Canty, Evan Cohen, and Paul Finebaum here to get us ready for the college football season. Jason McCourty going to be along in just a little bit. Guys, I watched that and I'm getting goosebumps.
It's here. Football is here. The wait is over. Can't wait to get at it.
All right.
Get at it. Who's he going to take down within the next 2 minutes is really what he means. Get at it. Let's see who he takes down.
I got a pretty good candidate with Paul Finebaum on. So I think we're all good there.
And Paul, let's start with the negatives here first. What is your biggest gripe with the AP poll?
I think Notre Dame is really too low at number 4, and I know some people will jump up and say, well, that's not such a big deal, but I think Notre Dame and Oregon are really 1A and 1B. And with Mendoza there, I think we would be having a completely different conversation, but they have Josh Hoover. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's a loaded top 5 or 6. There have been some years when you go back 8 or 9 years, it was Alabama and Clemson, and nobody else had a shot. This year, I really think it goes about 7 or 8 deep in terms of teams with a legitimate shot. I just don't think Indiana is on that top tier. But watch out for Oregon, watch out for Notre Dame. Ohio State is the most talented team in the country, but they also play the second week of the season against a team that's fairly equal in talent, and that's Texas.
And so you see on the bottom of the screen under where Paul is right now, the top 10 in order. So it's Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas, Indiana, Miami, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and then Oklahoma. Canty, within that list, what's your biggest gripe?
Yeah, I mean, Paul was talking about the people that were naysayers for Notre Dame. I'm one of them. I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to the Golden Domers. But for me, when it looks at the list, there's a lot of shade being thrown toward the U. The Miami Hurricanes were just in the national championship game, and they got Darian Mensah in the transfer portal. And as a Virginia alum, I can tell you from firsthand experience with the Darian Mensah experience that this guy is a baller, 3,900-yard passer. And then when you look at the touchdown scores for the U, you've got Malachi Tony, who's the best player in college football that nobody is talking about. And then you have a bowling ball of knives and running back Mark Fletcher, who only had 1,300 yards from scrimmage and 14 touchdowns. Combined between Malachi Tony and Mark Fletcher, you have 2,600 yards from scrimmage and 25 total touchdowns from a season ago. I get that it's blasphemous to talk about anybody else other than the team in Columbus or the team in Austin, Texas winning the national championship. But for my money, the best triplets in college football reside in South Florida with the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I understand the Hurricanes lost a ton of talent. CeCe Mauanoa, first-round pick, Akeem Mesidor, Ruben Bain, first round. You had 3 first-round draft picks in the trenches. So that is a lot to replace. But if there's any coach in college football that's capable of doing it, it's Mario Cristobal, who's a former offensive lineman at the U and an offensive line coach by trade. This guy understands how to win when it comes to big boy football. So I think Miami is really being disrespected by being 7th in the preseason poll.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that we're bringing up 2 of the teams from last year, obviously in the national championship game when you're talking about Miami and Indiana. And I think there's an argument to be made going into the season upon arrival. Not the results, but upon arrival, they actually both upgraded at quarterback. Josh Hoover, upon arrival, in my opinion, coming from TCU, is better than Mendoza was at this time last year coming from Cal. And Darian Mensah, as CeCe mentioned, I think we know Carson Beck's name because of Georgia, the Miami results, and now there's a legit shot he's a starter in the NFL. But I think there's an argument that Darian Mensah coming off the season he had at Duke was better than Carson Beck coming off of that Georgia season. But all of that said, we're talking about disrespect in the top 10. The best quarterback in college for college this year is Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss.
Yes.
So when you're looking at the disrespect, and they're at number 9 overall, remember, this is not about how they're going to fare in the NFL. Cool, Arch Manning's going to go number 1 overall. He's probably going to be awesome one day. It doesn't matter as it relates to how he's going to do at Texas. Tom Brady's the best quarterback that ever lived. He was very good at Michigan. Wasn't an all-time great at Michigan. Does anyone remember anything about Patrick Mahomes' Texas Tech career? Not much. This is about what college quarterbacks are going to do in college. And Trinidad Chambliss, go watch those games post-Lane Kiffin against Georgia and Miami and what he was able to do. So to me, there's your disrespect right there in terms of the biggest surprise is Ole Miss should be higher up at number 9. Then number 9, excuse me.
Paul, do you agree?
I agree about Chambliss, but I don't agree totally on Ole Miss. Evan, you make a really compelling argument, but Ole Miss's problem is that they lost the magician to LSU. And I know Pete Golding is a good defensive coach, and he has replaced a lot of people on that side of the ball, especially with losing Charlie Weiss Jr. as the offensive coordinator. But I just don't think Ole Miss is going to have the swag it did under Lane Kiffin, and it probably can deal with LSU on that third week. They also have to deal with Louisville, and I'm not trying to make a big deal about a first week game that really nobody is paying attention to. But Louisville's a good team. It will be an incredible test. The problem with Trinidad Chambliss is he doesn't need that much coaching. We saw in that Georgia game how magical he is. I mean, he is about as sensational on his own as any quarterback I have really seen, probably since Patrick Mahomes. But I worry about Ole Miss down the stretch. I mean, they've got the same tricky schedule that everybody else in the SEC has, dealing with Georgia and Texas and all the usual suspects. But I worry about them surviving the gauntlet.
Let's look at Indiana at number 6, because there's a team that's coming off an undefeated season last year, Heisman Trophy winner. What they did in the playoffs is remarkable, yet now this all boils down to a quarterback change. Can we not factor in here the quarterback that they just got in Josh Hoover, just completed 4 years at TCU, threw for nearly 10,000 yards, 71 touchdowns, and 33 interceptions? At what point do we give Curt Cignetti the benefit of the doubt that we've done to other coaches who find their teams consistently within the top 5 of these preseason polls every year?
I mean, I understand it, but I'm going to jump in here and say that there's just almost nowhere for them to be put. They are the third best team in their own conference. And I know that sounds like a slam, but it's not. It's a reality. And I think Indiana's schedule this year, and sometimes you can schedule yourself to death in talking about these things, but I think Indiana plays nobody in the preseason. We know that. That's a tradition unlike any other in Bloomington. But look what happens in late October. You may say, okay, well, Nebraska's terrible. No, they're not. Matt Rule has done a good job bringing that program back. They have Ohio State, and then they go to Michigan. That, to me, is a 3-game gauntlet that they didn't have to deal with last year. And then SC is going to be better. We've heard that a few times under Lincoln Riley. And Washington is another really sneaky team, and going to Seattle in November, to me, is a challenge. So they have 4 or 5 games that they really didn't have to deal with last year, Courtney. I'd love for them to play somebody in the preseason to get tested, but that's okay. They clearly don't want to do that because they've canceled all those games from now until the end of time. But let's not get carried away. They're not a one-hit wonder. Cignetti's the best coach in college football, but that schedule and whatever you want to say about Josh Hoover, he is not going to be Fernando Mendoza. I think everybody can bank on that. They're going to come back a little bit this year. I think they're still a playoff team, 10-2 at the worst, but that's still not worthy of being number 1 or number 2. So I understand Indiana graduates all over the country are now starting to sound like Ohio State graduates and Alabama graduates and Notre Dame graduates, but slow down a little bit, okay, IU? You've had your day. You'll have some fun, but you're not winning the national championship this year.
Try to knock me off my feet, still standing with more money than I came with. Hot damn, took a loss, but I'm still a gambling man, betting all the chips that I got left.